We invite you to stay tuned for the live broadcast of the Sunday evening Bible study of the Mayfield Drive Baptist Church, located at 271 Mayfield Drive, Smyrna, Tennessee. We will now join the service.
It's good to be here this evening, and we are. I'm not because I'm saying this, but when you deal with the area of, here you go, brother. Could you make sure Tawana gets this? When you get into this study of the Bible in 8 ages, and I'm going to give you a little bit of an introduction, because we're going to cover these pages, and there's not a lot of information on these pages, but I'm going to give you some filler to prepare you for this. There's a passage, especially with this part of the study, when we get into the area of the study of God. There's one thing we need to be mindful of. God is not a bit surprised in what's happening in America. Are you following me? He's not a bit surprised what's going on around the world. Of course, you may have heard of an individual by the name of Nebuchadnezzar in the book of Daniel. An individual that his pride got away from him. And of course, God allowed his kingdom to be taken over by another fellow by the name of Belshazzar. But when you look in Daniel chapter 4, verse number 25, there's a statement, and I still believe it still is today, is the aspect of the fact that God is still in control. In fact, God said this to, I believe it was Nebuchadnezzar, when he said, "The Most High ruleth in the kingdoms of men, and giveth it to whomsoever he will." Could it be possible that what we have seen happen in America, that God is allowing this to happen to get people to the place to realize that God is the one who is the ruler? See, he can take anything he wants. So I've got this kind of give you in a kind of a parable story, a parable picture. I said I've got to get something to give people an idea of the majesty and the immensity of God. That's supposed to be a artist's rendition of the universe. Yeah, the finger's too small. This kind of gives you an idea that he holds the universe. Now, by the way, that's just one universe. When you think about the aspect of the different stars, there's a star called Antares, and it would take, I forget how many suns, our sun, to go in there, and look how many Earths would go in the sun. But when you deal with this, God is still under control. He's still in control. So don't ever forget the aspect that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and he giveth to whomsoever he will. Don't be surprised when you start seeing things go haywire. It's not because God is not in control, but when people want to be humanistic, God will allow them to live like animals. He'll allow them to do that. That's called free will. So we're going to look at this, and I believe this is going to be very informative. We're going to be covering the aspect of, I think Katie mentioned sometime that she would like to have a study of the angelic, and that's going to be covered in this section of what I call the pre-Adamic age. We'll be looking at that. Then the Adamic age. By the way, when I use that term pre-Adamic, sometimes people think of K-Man. No, that's before Adam. And by the way, that's an age. Did anything happen before Adam? Absolutely. Then we'll come into what's called the flood age. And you're familiar with this. That'll be we'll eventually be covering things like dinosaurs and fossils and those things. The Abrahamic age, and then the law age, the church age, and then we'll get into the millennial age. And then the heavenly age. Now that's interesting, and I'm going to tell you right off that this is an outline of the book. I had this one semester. I learned a lot from it. Brother L.D. Foreman is the one who wrote this book. You can still get this book. It's in Bogard Press. You can still order the book. I don't know. I don't remember how much it is, but you can order the book. And a lot of information that you'll find in this. This was one of my, which was interesting. I had like 12 books to outline in one semester. It was crazy, and this was one of them, if you can imagine. But not only did I learn something, Twana learned something, because she was typing up. I'd give her notes, she'd type it up. You remember that, Twana? And it was a lot of work. Yeah. And the thing of it was I was using a Commodore 64. If you know what Commodore 6, oh yeah, Commodore 64. In fact, those are the old. That's the dinosaurs. And say what? Yeah, there's some people still using them. Exactly. So this study will help you to understand information, vital information. And again, I told Brother Jeremy, I said, this is a lot like doing your family history. There's a such thing as tales that are told, and they're nothing but just a tale until you get the right sources. You all understand what I'm saying? Sometimes have you ever run across something and right now this is my filler time, but this gives you an introduction what we're going to be covering. Not family history, but have you ever come to hearing a tale that you heard all your life, and when you really did the research, it's not what you thought it was in the family? Have you ever, anybody? No? Again, I use that where my granddaddy's daddy was supposed to have been shot playing with a gun, and that was not the story at all. So the aspect of the Bible, and of course with the Bible in 8 ages, if you take anything by an individual who has put a twist on it, you will never get the right information, and then you pass that down. So we're going to look at this aspect of the Bible in 8 ages. I'm going to take my time. If you have questions, please raise your hand. I want you to get this, and for those that are watching, this will be very informative. Yes, Sheila, did you have something? I saw the hand go up. I'm like the auctioneer. If she's ready to go, that's good though. So we're going to look at this. Look at this first phrase. God is said to inhabit eternity. That's very important. You get that. Think of it this way. When you look at this term, right, think of it in that picture. He inhabits eternity. He is not, I'm going to say this as we move on, he does not see things in one period of time. He knows what's going on in periods of time. But as things were, so you understand, as things were happening in Adam's age, he didn't just see Adam's age. He saw, and he is very much aware to the very last person. He inhabits eternity. In fact, Isaiah 57:15, and you should have it, for thus saith the high and lofty one, that's God, that inhabits eternity, whose name is holy. I dwell in the high and holy place with him, also that is of a contrite and humble spirit, to revive the spirit of the humble, and to revive the heart of the contrite ones. Isaiah, basically, he was saying, I'm in communion with the one who inhabits eternity. Time. We deal with time. What is time? It's something we have lived with. Time is measured eternity. Now, I will explain that. So, time, we've got to deal with time. These are introductory notes to our study. What is time? Eternity has neither beginning nor ending. Time is in between time is actually, and I want to say this very carefully, time has beginning and time has ending. You understand what I'm saying? Did everybody get that? Yes, Katie. Yeah. Time we live in minutes, seconds, hours, days, years. That's time. But selecting any beginning point in eternity, then moving, and this is time. Eternity has neither beginning nor ending, but selecting any beginning point in eternity, then moving to another point, we produce a period of time. Does that make sense to people? Okay. Genesis 1:1. Now, this is going to make the study of creation very interesting and understandable. Do you teens understand what I'm saying about time? Time has a beginning. In the beginning, God did what?
Created the heaven and the earth.
You could even say in the beginning, God created. But this tells what he created. In John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word. We know that Word was Jesus Christ, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Notice what I've got underlined there, the beginning. This is just fantastic, because through this part, understanding that when we talk about time, there was a period of time where you accepted Jesus Christ, your personal Savior. Mine was in 1982. It was in the evening. I'm not sure exactly what day that was, but that started a particular event for me. But on the other side, after that period of time, my salvation is eternal. It will never have an ending. The beginning indicates when time began. So when we say in the beginning, what does that indicate? When time started. You see that? Kate's going, I just want you. Does this make so? In the beginning is when time started. Okay. I'm sorry. I know. I was, when I started studying this, I said, wait a minute. When did at this case, when did God begin? He never did begin. He always has been. But when you see those two terms, the beginning, that indicated when time started. So in the beginning, God not only created the heavens and the earth, guess what else he created? He created time. Guess what God will do? He'll stop time. Yeah, notice the Alpha and Omega, the beginning, the ending. Here's something interesting. In the beginning, was the eternal continuum in the past. Before, in the beginning, or like I said, what does in the beginning indicate? What is it saying? That's what started what? Time. But before time was there. Not time, but there was. Was called the eternal continuum in the past. How far is the eternal continuum? There's no way to measure it. See, we think of forever. Think beyond that. Because in our minds, somehow we try to put some tangibility to eternal. With the eternal continuum, our mind cannot comprehend this. Now, That goes to the aspect when you hear this term, when we've been there 10,000 years, we would just have been what? Well, the thing about it is, by that time, there's no sense of understanding of time. I would use this as example. Twana's daddy passed away 20 some odd years ago. To him, he has no concept of time. Isn't that something? But in the beginning, before time started, there was the eternal continuum in the past. At the end of time, there'll be the eternal continuum in the future. Basically, and I'm going to try to put this as best as an illustration, this is time. Now, what does this start with? In the beginning. How does this end?
Everyone's dead.
The last word in Revelation. The last word of Revelation. But when we look at it this way, think of this Genesis, beginning of Genesis. There was the eternal continuum. Think of this. When the last word is said, there's the eternal continuum. And what's so fantastic about the whole thing, that God encompasses the eternal continuum in the beginning or the past, and the eternal continuum in the future. Now with God, the past is not the past. He still encompasses all that. It's mind-boggling. We can't wrap our minds around this. But with God, he encompasses as far as you can go to as far as this. He's not concerned with time, but he's concerned with how man uses time. Eternity does not limit itself. Otherwise, it would not be eternal. Now, look at that statement. Eternity does not limit itself. Otherwise, it would not be eternal. Now, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have what?
Eternal life.
Okay. Eternal, does that limit itself?
No.
If you could lose your salvation, would salvation be eternal?
No.
But does salvation have a starting point? Yes. So, I got thinking about this. If he said eternal life, there's no limit. If you could lose it, it would not be eternal. Eternal is without beginning or ending as far as the aspect of God, but salvation has a beginning. It won't have an ending. But when eternity is scribed, it's marked on a line that limit the amount of eternity, that is time. If you did this, and I wish I'd put this, if you take a line and you mark it, and you put and let's just imagine this right here, this line right here. As long as you don't put a starting place and an ending place, you don't have time. But the moment you put that, all you've got is eternity. But the moment I put a line and put a mark here and a mark here, I've just indicated a point in time. With God, he sees the past and he sees the future. But now when you accepted Christ personal Savior, within that line of eternity, you put a starting place when you were saved, but you will never put an ending to it. That's a wonderful aspect of it. Starting with the creation of heaven and earth, we make our first mark on eternity, thus the beginning of time. Starting with the creation of heaven and earth. In the beginning, we have just indicated a period of time. If there was no beginning, then there would be what? No time. There would be existence. Age. Here's another term we need to be aware of. These are things that are going to be covered in this. Age. AGE. Age is a subdivision of time. It's a period of time. This period, age or era, is limited by events marking either its beginning or ending. Now, let's make this very easy to understand. Are you waiting? This is interesting. For instance, here is the beginning of time. Let's put you as an example, or put me as an example. Here's in the beginning. That's when time started. The end of Revelation is when time will be end. Time will end here. When I was born, that started an age. And pretty soon, guess what's going to happen to that period of time? It's going to end somewhere. When we deal with this term age, we're going to be doing divisions, Bible divisions. The Bible in 8 ages, periods of time. So an age is a subdivision of time. It's a period of time. This period, age, or era is limited by events, marking either its beginning or its ending. Both beginning and ending is often noted, but the emphasis is more on the ending of age rather than its beginning. Is your mind thinking on these things? That things you've never thought of before? The age extends from the creation of heaven and the earth to the creation of man. This is what we're going to be dealing with in just a little bit. That's an age period. Dispensation. Here's something else. Dispensation. We use the term dispensation as there's dispensational periods. Dispense means to weigh out. Webster says to deal out in portions, to distribute. This all has to do with God distributing, distributing. Thank you, Tawana. Different things in those periods. A monument. These are so important. Here's a sad commentary. But when we deal with a monument, and I'll go back with this, but a monument is a marker. More exactly, it is a conspicuous, enduring example. Some particular item, fact, or incident, outstanding enough to mark or characterize a period of time. Let me give you an example. Monuments are important. Let me give you this example. A person dies. What do they put? They put a monument. What does that indicate? An event. They always have a birthday. But it all, in that aspect, it indicates there was a person that existed as an event. Now, if there is no monument, if there's no marker, what is that actually saying? That person never existed. I've got on my mama's side and a few on my daddy's side, they were cremated. They have no monument. They have no marker. People say, well, if they cremated, they don't need a monument. I put it this way right here. With cremation, I think a person needs to have a monument because they existed. They were involved in some kind of period of time. And when we talk about a monument, a marker, especially with these ages, it's stating something happened. An age may be highlighted by one or more monuments. For instance, let's use Noah's Ark as a monument. Something happened there. In the case of age 1, there'll be 3 outstanding items or monuments. And we'll be covering some of these. God, angels, and creation. Those are monuments. Those are events. Those are individuals. Here's another thing, pre-Adamic. This tonight's just been kind of an introduction, because there is so much I'm going to be adding to not only my notes I've had in the past, but also things I'll be adding in Brother Foreman. He's dead now. But think of pre-Adamic. This is important. Pre means before, in front of, or in front of Adam. It refers to mankind. And the suffix IC indicates belonging to. Putting them together, the expression means that which was before mankind. This is a hard concept for many people, but keep in mind, before, in the beginning, was the pre-Adamic age. That's not saying cavemen. There was not man before Adam. God created how many men? Only one. Well, we hear this all the time. Let me go back. Okay, I'm going to. Were you created?
Yes.
No, you were reproduced. You get what I'm saying? There was one man that was created. There was one woman that was built. And from that one man and that woman, we were all reproduced. Terminologies. You get what I'm saying? Yeah, there it goes. It's the way words, boy, God created, in fact, God created me. No, he allowed me to be reproduced. He didn't bring me from the dust of the earth, you understand what I'm saying? But before Adam, there was something. Pre-Adamic age accounts for all that happened before man was created. How much of that do we really know? Whatever the Bible tells us. Anything beyond that, beyond that, there's a term called the law of unnecessary inference. In other words, inferring something that's not there. When you deal with the Bible, if the Bible does not deal with something, leave it alone. But let's say this. By what God has done, he has explained a lot. Someone will say this, you don't find dinosaurs in the Bible. You ever heard that before? Have you ever seen a fossil? Yes. Give you another example. Try to find cat in the Bible. You won't find it. But do cats huh? Say what now? Oh, yeah, the things the government's made. But there's things by his creation that has proven what he's done. I'll deal with that in just a minute. Did anything happen before Adam was created? Yes. Yes. And the answer is yes. How much of that do we know? Not a whole lot. But I'm going to give you this. How much will we know when we leave this life? Is beyond. My theology professor said this, that God created everything in the universe for man to enjoy. God gets the glory, right? There'll be things that we'll be able to, and he said this, and I'm just going to use his theology because we'll know it better as time goes on. But he said, I really believe this, that there's things in the universe that we'll be able to explore and see. Because we won't have any limit. That gives God the glory. There was a before Adam, the pre-Adamic age. That does not mean that you existed before you came, like some said, well, you existed in the somewhere in the thing, no, you exist, you start to exist when your mom and daddy decide to have you and the egg and sperm come together. That's when you start to exist. Say what? Yes, spirit babies, yes. But we never existed. We never come into being before the conception. Now, think of it this way right here, and this is a scary thought. After conception, are we eternal, lost and saved? Are we eternal after conception?
Yes.
You say yes? What do you say? Yes? Anybody else?
I mean, unless God, like, somehow, like,
So what?
I mean, unless God somehow wipes you, so mad at you that you know it, you're gone.
Here's the fact of the matter. When you were conceived, at that moment, you're not blotted out. You are an eternal being, destined to heaven or hell. So if we are eternal after conception, and there'll be people that'll be put in the lake of fire, that tells me that the lake of fire is eternal. On the other side, if you know Jesus Christ as personal Savior, you have an eternal with Him. The study of God. That was the introduction. We're on the study of God. It's not the purpose of this study to prove the existence of God. Let me say this. This is, and I'm going to put this in the same thing. The purpose of the Bible is not to prove the existence of God. God is an accepted principle that no proof is necessary for men in faith. You notice that thing? The Bible is a book of faith.
Amen.
Were you there when the rain came with Noah? But you take that by what? By faith. Were you there when God said, "Let there be"? No. You take that by faith. Yeah, Grant said I was. That's why you're so smart, Grant. Creation, now, by the way, the Bible, when we deal with the Bible, again, I'm going to say, don't take this to try to prove anything. Don't take this course trying to prove anything, because that's not the purpose of this. Creation testifies to existence of one supreme intelligence. Romans 1, and I want you to see this. Now, this is interesting. We talk about we've got to get the gospel to the natives or the cannibals in Africa. What if they don't hear the gospel? Look at this. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all unrighteousness or ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who hold the truth in unrighteousness. That word is hold down the truth in unrighteousness. Because that which may be known of what? Of God is manifest where? Okay, before we go any further. In the context, he's not talking about within here. Because the atheist could care less. Guess where God has manifested himself? Among them. Within the group. For instance, if you go outside and you look at the trees, doesn't mean God has manifested himself within here. But when you get an individual that begins to look and really wants to know, God reveals himself. He still reveals himself to lost and saved every day. Because that which may be known of God is manifest in them, for God has showed it unto them. The atheists. Do they have an excuse? Raised up in an atheistic or even the satanic church or whatever, and a person is raised up, do they have an excuse for not accepting that there is a creator? Do they have an excuse? Why? I'm putting it to you. I'm an atheist. No, there ain't no God. How can you tell me there's a God? There's only one answer. Look around you. Look and see that things didn't, you can't tell me things just fell. Everything is in a pattern. You look at, and it's interesting. Look at a ladybug. You can take a ladybug and put one here and here and here and here and here and here, and you can't tell them apart. They look. That just did not happen. Flowers. Red roses, yellow roses, pink roses, whatever colors. Their colors may be different, but I'm going to tell you something. A rose will still look like a rose. And thorns. This stuff just didn't happen. Chihuahuas. You can have chihuahuas in a room in there, and they can have all different colors, but chihuahuas still look like chihuahuas. Because that which may be known of God, God has showed it unto them. So look at this. For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen. That means this, that the invisible things of him from the beginning of creation, God said it happened. He didn't take what existed. He set it into being. And it happened. Are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made. Even as eternal and power and Godhead, so they are what? Without excuse. So if a person dies and goes to hell, does that mean that God did not show himself? No. First of all, God begins to deal with the aspect of who he is, creation-wise. If a person wants to hold that down, he'll still die and go to hell. He can't say that there was no proof. Oh, yes, there was. Because when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, neither were they thankful, but because they became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. Now, here's interesting. When we deal with the Bible is the source of information for what God does. I'm going to give you the other thing. I want you to see this. The Bible is a source of what God does and what he's doing. Whether a person wants to take it, that's up to him. And I know that Bella, you got people around, kids around you that don't think that God exists. They could care less about it. But the fact remains, God has still showed it to him. I mean, showed it. The evidence is there. Atheist is just saying, no, he doesn't. God has certain laws. For instance, you can be an atheist and say, I don't believe. Can you imagine? Here I am. There's a wall right there, and I say, if you run in that wall, you're going to hurt yourself. But here comes another individual. I'm going to use Bella. I don't pick on her much, but there's Bella, and she comes along and says, someone told me that I can run through that wall. All I've done is given her the proof. I showed her this right here. What she wants to do with it, that's up to her. Yeah, run through the wall. See, well, it's not like the 4D man, there was a movie. Yeah, first of all, they're going to haul you to the hospital with a broken nose,
Only a broken nose.
Yeah, broken nose and whatever. Yeah, and it's kind of like this. Let's imagine hell. Here's another thing. There's no way you can prove hell, but God has given us the information. That's what I said. The Bible is man's source of information for what God does and what he's doing. That's all we have is God, the source. But what's interesting is, for man to conceive the idea of any object, whether an animate or inanimate, as divine, is repulsive to God. I'm going to say this again. When you deal with this, the Bible is man's source of information for what God does. Creation shows there is a God. You follow what I'm saying? So you can't use this to prove anything. But I tell you what goes on has proven. So for man to conceive the idea of any object, and I'm going to tell you something else. Any object, any type of worship, whether it's animate or inanimate, is as divine, is repulsive to God. Humanism replaces what God, and that's repulsive to God. A stone or a mountain or tree or grove or bird or beast, a heavenly body, real or fancied, or a graven image of such to which man pay homage to, is strictly forbidden by God. If what is an image? What's an idol? But okay, but what is an idol? What can an idol be? Something worshipped. Can it be? It is something worshipped for the person, for humanism to be satisfied. Here's something else. You talk about humanism. You ever heard of American Idol? You ever heard of that? You know what the sole purpose of American Idol is for those individuals? They want to be worshipped. You check that out. I mean, I've seen some things they do, but why would they call it American Idol? An idol is something to be worshipped. If I can just win at this thing here, I'm going to be the greatest there is. And the person, have you seen this? They'll be interviewing them, and they will say something that America's Got Talent. You ever seen that one? Is that the one with Simon? Which one's? And they think they've got the best voice in the universe, and they start to sing because everybody told them they had the best voice, and you hear them, and oh man, and Simon tried to tell them, well, why do you think? Because that's what my friends have said. And then their world falls apart. But anything, and that goes with the aspect, even our life can be an idol. Did you know it's interesting too? Did you know our bodies can be an idol? I'm gonna put it this way right here. Did you know a church, if we're not careful, a church can be an idol? How can that be? Because the church is not what we worship, which a lot of them, that's the whole thing. But a church is a place where we worship. Now, let's go back. And I'll tell you, there's a group right now with this, and we're coming to the end. But there's a group right now that have the mindset that if I just do whatever I want to do, live by certain rules, I'm going to become a god on a planet. That is stinking humanism. And God's not pleased with that. So when we deal with this, I've just started wetting your taste buds on this. I didn't want to give you too much, but always the introduction, you're not going to cover a whole lot. Any question, any thoughts or ideas? Any thoughts or ideas? I'm surprised. Jeremy, you don't have any thoughts.
You've been listening to the live broadcast of the Sunday evening Bible study of the Mayfield Drive Baptist Church in Smyrna, Tennessee. We invite you to tune in at the same time next Sunday evening for another live broadcast of the Sunday evening Bible study. We would love to see your comments regarding this broadcast. You may email us at imbr@imbmpodcasts.com. That's imbr@imbmpodcasts.com. Or you may write to us at International Missionary Baptist Radio, P.O. Box 1676, Smyrna, Tennessee 37167. That's International Missionary Baptist Radio, P.O. Box 1676, Smyrna, Tennessee 37167. Thank you for listening, and may you have a blessed day.